All right, let's talk about risk now, right? This is a big one. How many times have we heard this? I can't start a business on my own. I'm destined to be an entrepreneur. God made me an entrepreneur, but I can't do it right now because my 2 boys are about to go off to college, and so I'm saving up for their college fund. Or the economy is bad right now. I've got a really good job. I've got really good benefits at the moment. I don't want to sacrifice my benefits, and so I can't start a job right now. But I'm going to really soon. We hear this all of the time, and it's all about risk. And so what I want to do is argue that we need to diversify our risk as much as possible and reduce risk so that it's not a risky situation. And again, I pointed out earlier my excellent drawing abilities. I want to make this as evidence 1, article 1 in my defense of my drawing abilities case. I'm an excellent artist, aren't I? Can you see why they kicked me out of architecture school? It's hard to fathom, isn't it? So anyway, let's play a little game here. We are on vacation in Acapulco, Mexico, and we're going to go see the cliff divers because that sounds like a fun thing to do. When you go to Mexico, you go see the cliff divers. And so here I am Bob on vacation, and here is Jose, our lifelong cliff diver. And the question is who is the entrepreneur in this circumstance, right? Who is the one who's willing to take the risk? Who is our risky guy here, right? So Bob works for Citibank back home, senior vice president of Citibank, right? So he has a very stable job. He knows where his next check is coming from. But Jose only gets to work when it's not raining. If it's raining, none of the tourists come. He doesn't get to work in the summer because it's too hot, so the tourists don't come. He's 100% relying on thousands of people to come and give him $2 each as a tip, right? Jose has also been doing the same thing for 30 years. He's been doing this since he was 14. His daddy trained him when he was 14 to be a cliff diver. He's been doing this exact same thing for 14 years. He also does all sorts of really boring things like studying the water. He sits out there for days just studying the waves and looking at the waves. And no one knows why he's studying the water, but he just studies the water. And also every time before he does his cliff dive, he goes swimming down in the pool. He goes swimming down in the pool where he's going to land. And he has all of these methodical things that he's done. And so the question is, who's taking the risk here? Right? Well, if we analyze it a little bit further, we see what happens, right? Bob, he also probably had a couple of Mai Tais or special drinks with umbrellas in it to get up the courage to jump off this cliff, right? And of course, he jumps off the cliff, hits the rock, and the shark eats him, and he's dead. Jose, on the other hand, why does he go swimming before he jumps in the water every time? Because he's also feeding the fish, the shark, so that the shark's not hungry when he's going to be in the water 5 minutes later. He's feeding the shark, and he's also down there to make sure that no stumps have floated into the water. And he's been swimming in that pond for 30 years and knows exactly where the rocks are. And he studies the water. Why does he study the waves? So that he knows that when it crests way out there is the time to jump. But the water's the shallowest then, but he knows it's going to take him 4 seconds to fall. And during those 4 seconds, that shallow area will bubble up with water, and so have a lot of water to land in because it takes 4 seconds for that cresting wave to come into here. And he has studied the environment in such a way that Jose here is the one that's done everything he can to reduce the risk. He studied the industry for 30 years. He's made connections in the industry. He's networked with the sharks. He knows everything about the industry. And so what we realize is that Jose is in fact being more entrepreneurial. Entrepreneurs don't start businesses that they have no idea what they're doing. Because if they do, what happens? They fail and they're not an entrepreneur anymore. They're just a failure, right? Entrepreneurs do network and find lots of connections in a space before they decide to jump into it. They don't just jump into a space with no friends in that industry, right? And so anything you can do to reduce the risk, I'm going to call entrepreneurial. You remember when Chris was talking a few minutes ago about how that failure is a good thing for entrepreneurs? I 100% agree. When I'm talking to other entrepreneurs, I'll ask, how many times have you been bankrupt? Well, Will here, he's never been bankrupt. Well, you know what that means to me? He's never pushed it very hard. Because if you push hard enough, eventually you're going to go bankrupt. It means he's not really trying. He's an entrepreneur, but he's taking it kind of easy on himself. He's luxuriating in this. Whereas Jose over here is doing everything they can to push the limits and learn new things and continuously figure out how to reduce the risk. So all of these definitions of entrepreneurship involve risk. They all talk about considerable risk, assuming the risk and everything. And I'm going to argue that these definitions are all horrible. Every one of these is wrong. Because we as entrepreneurs hate risk. I don't want more risk, I want less risk. Why do I get other investors to put in business and money into my business? To diversify the amount of risk that I am taking, right? Entrepreneurs that are risk takers do not succeed. They fail. And they fail in a bad way. You know, there's two types of failing. There's failing forward and failing backwards. Have you ever heard that distinction? Right? If you fail forward, that's fine. You learn something, you're going to make progress, you're going to do your next business better. Most of the time, entrepreneurs fail backwards and go, wow, that entrepreneurship stuff is not for me. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to try something else. So I want to draw a huge distinction between risk and uncertainty. They're not the same thing. Risk are the very tangible things that can cause bad. We run out of money, we don't get the contract, whatever. Uncertainty are things that we just don't know. Huge difference. What I want to do as an entrepreneur is reduce risk down to the point where it's a no-brainer. I'm using your money. If I'm using your money, how risky is it to me? Not risky at all. What if I already have a contract before I start the business? I already know where my sales are coming from before I start the business. How risky is that? Doesn't sound very risky. Will over here started a business 2 weeks ago and he's already got 2 clients. Does that sound risky to you? That doesn't sound very risky to me. Sounds like he's worked really hard before he started his business so that now that when he starts the business, it's a no-brainer. He goes to his wife and says, honey, I want to start a business. I've been in this industry for 30 years. I have thousands of connections. I already have 2 people that I think are going to pay me. Would you support me starting this business? Well, yeah, honey, that's a great idea because you've done everything you can to reduce the amount of uncertainty to the point where the only uncertainty is whether, how many customers you're going to get. Is 2 the max or is it going to be 20? In other words, I'm going to reduce risk down to 0 by every way I can. And as an entrepreneur, there's thousands of things we can do to reduce risk. Increase sales in advance. Have other people put in the money. Or the huge one is to limit how much money you invest in the first place. For my wife's Amazon business, how much risk did she have? $500. And again, I pointed out that most of that she could resell as inventory, maybe even at a profit. So what she's really risking is not money, time. Right? So let's make a list of all of the things that we can risk when we talk about that. Where is yeah, when we talk about this, there are only 5 things that I think you can risk. Right? And we as people, as pre-entrepreneurs, only focus on the money. I'm risking the money. I'm going to take $100,000, second mortgage my house, and start a business. Okay, well, you've decided to take a lot of risk. But as entrepreneurs, I also want to realize that there are other things that we can risk. We can risk our reputation, right? And one of the great things about America is that if you fail as an entrepreneur, what do Americans think of you? Is your life over? Can you start another business?
Sure.
Right. Do Americans look down on failed entrepreneurs?
No.
I would say no. I don't really think we do. He tried it. He failed. At least he tried. We've heard that. At least he tried. I don't think we judge entrepreneurs who fail too badly. Like Donald Trump, right? How many times has Donald Trump been bankrupt? I remember 3. 3 at least, right? But do we still respect Donald Trump as a business mogul? We do. And the fact that he's gone bankrupt, in my mind, just makes him cooler. He fought back and won again.
A huge part of it is that
That's right. That's right. So all of these other things are important. But again, I just want you to know that we can reduce these. How can we protect our relationships when we take this sort of risk? By being more honest with people, by saying, here's what I hope to do, and if it fails, it won't fail for me lack of trying or something like that. There are things you can do. Also, health is a big one. I've personally risked my health a lot as an entrepreneur. I had one time where I went to the doctor, and the doctor left the room. Go ahead and open them. The doctor left the patient room and came back in a couple of minutes later and said, I have to get you a hospital bed. I'm putting you in the hospital right now. You're that sick. And he left, and I put my clothes back on and snuck out the fire door of the doctor's office, setting off the building's fire alarm, because I had a meeting with my banker in like an hour. And I'm not sick enough to not go to the bank, right? Because my business is going to fail if I don't go to the bank. So I ended up in the hospital for 93 days at the end of that story. But we risk all of these things. All of them can be reduced, especially the money piece, right? And so we want to do every trick possible to reduce the money. That's why we're so obsessed with bootstrapping, right? That's why we try to get other investors. Anything we can do so that it's not risky. Okay, honey, I want to start a business, but I'm only going to take $500 to do it, okay? And I figured out how I can do it in 6 hours a week, and I'm going to quit golf, so I'm not going to need any extra 6 hours. But here is how I have figured out how to make it fit into our lives. I have now convinced my honey that I am going to do the steps necessary to make this not destroy us. And so I'm reducing risk. Now would you like to do it? Well, I don't know, Jim, maybe not. It still sounds really risky. What if you don't get any customers? Okay, you're right. Maybe I won't get any customers. A week later, honey, I've got a customer. I now have a contract. I've reduced the risk even more. Your number one objection was, what if we can't find customers? I've already got customers. Is this still a good idea? I love the story of Kevin. I'm drawing a blank on the last name right now, but Kevin here in town started Kaja Popcorn down at Peachtree Battle Shopping Center. It's gourmet popcorn. It's delicious. I'm not a huge popcorn person, but this stuff is fantastic. And he had a really good corporate job in advance. And he went to his wife and said, I want to start a popcorn store. Well, how is a wife whose husband makes $300,000 a year going to respond to that? You are crazy. You are insane. You're making $300,000 a year now, and you want to throw it all away to sell popcorn. This is the dumbest idea I've ever heard. He goes, perhaps you're right, but what if I can do this? What if I can find a lease that we agree makes a lot of sense, a long-term lease that's not that expensive? And what if I can find some people here in town who will come up with some amazing flavors for me in advance, and I can get some actual chefs to come up with some amazing flavors? And what if those same chefs promise to buy $1,000 of popcorn a week to give away as their bar food? What if I can do all of those things, honey? Well, she said, yeah, if you can go and do all of those things, then I think that this could be a good thing. Well, you know what he did? He went out and did every single one of those things. Found someone who would commit to buying it. And now if you go to King and Duke, they give away his popcorn at the bar, right? A lot of places do. He also has his popcorn used in some desserts now around in town. But he minimized his risk by going out there and saying, I got all of the checks done, honey. Everything that we agreed I had to do first has been accomplished. Now how much is it risking our family? And she said yes, and now the business is doing tremendously well, and they'll probably be opening new stores soon. A methodical process to reduce your risk. I want you to focus on that as much as you do your creativity. Right? Oh, I have an idea. I want to start a concierge service. Well, that's great. Great. Now what can we do to make it less risky? Get people signed up in advance. Reduce my costs. And what about this? My wife, I already told you about her great job. She's a computer programmer. She makes $40,000 a year. But here's the most important thing. She's been there 10 years now, and I think she gets 7 weeks of paid vacation now. And if she's there like another year, she gets 10 weeks a year of paid vacation. Plus she has amazing health care benefits. It's a hospital, so the health care benefits are amazing. Plus, whenever our kid goes to the hospital, we go to a special door. Like when y'all go to the hospital to take your kids in, we're off at another door on the side. We walk straight in, go straight to a room, right? How much is that worth when your kid's got a broken leg, right? Honey, we can't afford for you to stop your job. We can't afford for you to lose those health care benefits. I've got health care conditions. I can't get insurance, so I'm one of those people. I have to have a wife who has good benefits, right? It's the reason I married her, she jokes. That's not true. She has a condo in the Caymans. That's the reason I married her, the condo in the Caymans. So, but for us, for her to reduce her risk means more income. So that's why this Amazon business that I was telling you about is so perfect. She can work full time and still do this business on the side. I love that because you're diversifying risk. So now I have, whenever I want to start a business, whatever I do is I make sure that my little pot of money still comes in every month. And as long as I still make $5,000 a month, I'm allowed to go and do whatever I want on the side. That's the deal I've made with my wife, right? As long as this is there, you can go and do something. But you can't spend any of that money to start this. You can't do anything. You can't rob from over here to start this. You just have to start the business with the money you have. And how risky is that then? All I'm risking is my time, right? So I love that. I will tell you this though, I snuck into one of our accounts and took $100,000 out 9 months ago for a business thing and just had to tell my wife about it last week. And I waited though until right after she had sold our house out from underneath me, and so that she was really in the hole and she knew how mad I was at her. And I was like, oh yeah, well by the way, I stole $100,000 from you last week or last month. And so I did it at a good time, Barry. It was well played. So I didn't have to sleep on the sofa for too long. But anyway, reducing your risk by every means is a great idea. I want to go back a couple of slides that I skipped over. This is a great quote from The Millionaire Next Door by Stanley Danko. I don't know if you've read this book. It's one of the best books out there. We're going to talk about it quite a bit in a few minutes. But one of the quotes is this: what is risk? Risk is being an employee. If you work at Coca-Cola, what are the chances that your entire department will be downsized? Nothing to do with you. It wasn't you that got fired. They got rid of the whole department. Is that your fault? No, but is that likely? Is that a possibility? It's a huge possibility, a huge possibility. How many of us have been right-sized, downsized, outsourced? We hear about that all the time. And so I would make this argument that the person who has an amazing job at Bank of America and makes $100,000 a year at Bank of America has more intrinsic risk in their life than a man who owns a landscaping company with 100 clients. I think you're in this situation that the landscaper is in a safer position. What are the chances that a whole department will get eliminated at a major company in the United States? 1 out of 4. 1 out of 4 that you will get eliminated, right-sized, downsourced, outsourced, that your job will simply be eliminated. It happens too often in a world where companies are fighting constantly for quarterly profits. What's the easiest way to get your stock to go up? Fire 10,000 people. And who are those 10,000 people fired? Random people. It's not like, well, we don't like you and we don't like you. No, no, no. It's the whole front row. We don't care who's on the front row, but the front row's out of here. Well, that might have been your best producers, but they don't fire that way. The whole front row. Whereas the landscaper guy, what if he ruins one yard? The entire yard goes brown and kills all the grass. He's going to lose one client. Maybe he'll lose the neighbors. Maybe he loses 5 clients from it. But he still has 95 other clients to support him, right? How does his entire business go away? He dies, or he gets arrested as for stealing grass fertilizer from his clients or something, right? It's hard to make his whole business go away, though, isn't it? He has more security. So I would argue he has 100 streams of income, where someone who works for Citibank has 1 stream of income. So when my wife says, I'm going to start a little side business, That's awesome because it increases our streams of income and it decreases the family risk that we won't have enough money to pay mortgage. So, one of our big rules is that you should start things on the side. If at all possible, don't stop what you're doing now. So this idea of I'm going to quit my job and become an entrepreneur, I think is the dumbest thing on the earth. What I hope that happens is that you get fired from your job. Here's the story that I hope plays out. You start a little company on the side. Let's say you start an Amazon business on the side. And at first it doesn't take too much time. You have to call a couple suppliers every now and then, but you can go and do that during lunch. Then your business starts to grow and everything. You're starting to do better and better, and maybe your work starts to suffer because of it. And then I suggest you take up smoking. I think all entrepreneurs have to be smokers. You have to be a smoker to be an entrepreneur. Why? Because smokers get those 15-minute breaks every other hour, right? You see all the smokers go outside. I don't want you out there smoking. I want you out there on your telephone doing your business, right? Because you're doing your other job on their time, reducing your risk. I'm still getting benefits from this company, so I'm still going to do my job, but I'm going to get as much free time off to the side as possible to do my other stuff. And then eventually, your boss comes in and says, you're not as good as you used to be. 2 or 3 years ago, you were my best employee. Now you're like in the middle of the pack. What's happening? I'm really thinking about firing you. And you go, fine, I have another business now to fall back on. I've spent 3 years building that business. It's now enough to support me. The reason I'm so preoccupied is because it did $112,000 last year. I don't have time to do both of these anymore, so maybe I do deserve to get fired. But again, you've taken those 3 years to reduce your risk. The real reason I left architecture school was the dean came to me and said, Jim, you've been talking about this side business for the last 3 years. You're not doing very well in school right now. You don't have your hours. Why aren't you getting your hours? I was like, because I'm too busy running my business. And they were like, well, maybe you should do that full time. I was like, maybe I should do that full time. And I did. At that point, we did $7 million that year in revenue. So multiple income streams is the best way to diversify risk. And I would say right now that none of you should stop what you're doing. You should just add more to it. So that means less television, less sports, less free time on the weekend, no golf, no extra cooking classes. You're going to devote your time to building that second business. And that's what your free time is going to be spent on. And that's the ultimate way to reduce risk. The ultimate way to reduce risk. All right? We are also risking all of these things, right? All of these things can certainly come about by excessive entrepreneurship, right? Every one of these has been impacted in my life. I got a divorce because of entrepreneurship. My wife was not in favor of the way I was, we just didn't work out. She was a non-entrepreneurial woman and I was an entrepreneurial guy, and I think that was enough to ruin it. Certainly the hours and the stress, I have worked years on end nonstop without a single day of vacation, and the stress has been really high from that. I've also been sued more times than I can count. I have sued more people than I can count, and I hate lawyers. I'm one of the people who thinks lawyers are a bad thing in the world. We'd all be better off if all the lawyers were dead. But at one point I remember very distinctly going through my cell phone and having 14 lawyers on speed dial. As an entrepreneur, you're going to have these situations. So that is just one of the stresses that you're going to come up with. Don't forget, discount that. It will happen. And you'll get sued for something you did absolutely nothing to deserve. The first time I ever got a really, really big legal action involved one of the kids that we had at camp during the summer, went back and I think in late November ended up committing suicide. And we were blamed for that. 6 months after we had any contact with the child, we got sued for it. Of course, it was thrown out immediately, but that doesn't change the fact that I had to deal with it, right? And have to live through that. Also, your credit score, the whole myth about entrepreneurs being separate from their businesses, right? That is a complete lie. There's no one in America that's going to give you office space unless you personally sign on the line. And so I remember very distinctly one day, all my employees had cars. On the third year, I think, that you had been with us, we gave you a car. And you had a choice. It was either an Audi 5 or a Saab 3. You got one of those two cars just given to you. And I leased them all. Every one of them was a lease, and I signed my name on every single one of the leases. And I remember one day we were in the office and it started raining and it started hailing, and all of a sudden it started being golf ball size hail. And we looked out and all of a sudden we realized that the cars were starting to get damaged. And I looked out and there was like, I have 32 cars out there that I'm responsible for that are now getting destroyed. And then at the end, let me tell you this, that business did end up going bankruptcy, which is a very long story, which I will tell you. It was all planned as part of a larger scheme. In the end, we ended up walking away from over 25 corporate leases, including office space and cars and stuff like that. And who had signed every one of those? Me. So that's 12 years ago. My credit rating is still like a 12 or something. Because you as an entrepreneur, your credit score is going to get abused. Just get used to it. Just get used to it. It is the way it is. If you really get into this, it's going to take a hit somehow. I promise you, it's going to take a hit. So just be prepared for that, right? And we've talked about financial risk enough. So I don't want to discount that it is painful along the way. Well, let's ask this. Who is more scared of losing all of their money? A rich person or my wife? A rich person. Because if a rich person loses their money, how are they going to get it back? Well, that's assuming that they inherited it, they divorced it, bankrupt. Yeah, I think that my wife is more comfortable with risk because she understands, she knows she can go do it again, right? I know that if you threw me down in the middle of a desert island, I'd figure out a way to make money, right? That's what I do. And so the people who deal with risk every day, who test their courage every day, they're the people who don't have fear. Don't have fear. And it's very true. If you ask a really, really rich person who inherited the money what they're afraid of being poor, right? So it changes you and changes your personality. So our conclusions from this, entrepreneurs are not risk takers. They're just not. Risk takers are bungee jumpers and parachuters. Entrepreneurs are people that reduce risk. They reduce the uncertainty to the point there's no chance that they could fail. At this point, I don't start a business unless I have contracts in hand. I don't start a business unless I'm 100% certain it's going to make money. And here's another, let me take it a little step further. With my first business, we didn't do anything until it was required that it be done. Okay? So what does that mean? I don't get a checking account until I have a check to put into it. Why get a checking account for your business if you don't have money to put into it? Okay, let's take that a step further. What do you need to get a checking account? A business license and an FEIN number from the IRS. The IRS you have to have a social security number for your business. It's called a FEIN, Federal Employer Identification Number. Those are the two things you need to get a bank account. I don't get either of those two things until I have a check in my hand. Because I don't need those two things. Why do you need to incorporate your business yet if you don't know if you're going to make money yet? Why even spend the money and the time, the $35 to incorporate? Why do that and take that much risk? Yeah, it's gone up. You're right. I think yeah, you're right. I'm not even going to do that. I'm not going to do anything until I have to do it. So when I started my first business, we created a name that we knew no one else had. We started advertising. But I didn't have that name incorporated yet. I didn't have anything until I got that first check. And that first check was $100, and I remember it very distinctly. I walked into SunTrust, I walked up to Barbara and said, Barbara, I need you to open up a checking account in this company's name so I can get this money. She's like, but Jim, you don't have any of the paperwork. It's like, I'll bring you the paperwork. Open up a checking account. And she did, which then was marginally illegal. Now it's very illegal, but I bet you they would still do it. They would still do it. I'm reducing my risk in every way possible. I'm not even going to spend however much it costs to incorporate unless I need to. So I'm obsessive about this risk reduction. absolutely obsessive. Because my wife has no desire to take any risk, so I only come to her when it's a no-brainer. We love to transfer our risk and use other people's money. And here's our number one thing, though. In my house, we call $5,000 a week at Disney, right? I'm obsessed with Disney. My favorite thing in the world is to go to a Disney vacation, right? 1 week at Disney cost me $5,000. Very expensive to go to Disney. You know, $48 a person for tickets, and you know, it just adds up really fast, right? So I am willing to sacrifice 1 week at Disney to start a new business. That is the rule, not a penny more. And if it costs me more than $5,000 to start a business, I probably won't do it. Or I will figure out how to do it for under $5,000, right? So that means that your business might grow slower. It means you might not have some of the things you want at the beginning, but that's fine, you know? Do you have to have a website to go sell stuff? No, you don't. Everyone thinks you do. Oh, I have to build my website and then I'll go out and start my business. No. Go sell first. And then if you get some sales, go buy a website. And tell your first customers, I don't have a website yet because I'm brand new, but you're going to save that money. I'm not going to charge you for that. You know, it's going to be a little bit cheaper because I don't have a website. I'm brand new. But you know what? On the other hand, if I screw up this one account, if you're not happy with me, my business dies. And I know that. So that means I'm going to have to treat you better than you've ever been treated in your life. How is that for a pitch? It's not bad, is it? To be blatantly honest and say, I have to make you 200% happy because that's the only way you're going to tell your friends, and that's the only way I'm going to grow my business. If you're not 200% happy, I'm going to go out of business. I'm going to kill myself to make you happy. But on the other hand, I don't have a website. I don't have business cards yet because I don't need them yet. You remember my name. Here's my name, right? Reduce risk. I only spend $5,000, and that has some businesses I just haven't done because of that. I've said I'm not going to do that business at all because I can't do it. Again, the time I spent a bunch of money, that business crashed and burned ugly, and I lost $1 million. And so let's try not to do that.